workflow, you talk when I look at your materials, especially online, you talk a lot about productivity and how important it is that we are as efficient as we possibly can be. So I'm curious, from your own standpoint, how do you make sure that you're as productive as you can be? What tools do you use, and how do you kind of approach your day to be as productive and efficient as you can be?
Well, I like to think first of myself as a student before being any kind of coach or teacher. I think my definition, I wish there was a different word than productivity, but my definition of productivity is the good feeling that you get when you do something significant that you plan to do. And I'll go back to the beginning again. It's the good feeling you get. We've all had days where we've been busy but not necessarily productive, and you just get home from work and you're just like, I just don't feel great. And then there's days where we've done one or two things and you're like, hey, this came off, and you feel good, and you go into your evening or your away from work time in a happier mood. So I think, and hopefully you build on that too as well. Second of all, I'd like to say that, and I obviously didn't come up with this, but it's more important to be effective than efficient, or than efficient, sorry, not than, effective than efficient. The analogy that I would use is that if I were a door-to-door salesman, if I were just focused on efficiency, I would just knock on the door, say, would you like to buy this? No, thank you, run away to the next door. And at the end of the day, when I was making a report to myself or whoever, I'd say, hey, I was really efficient today, I knocked on 500 doors. But then if someone asked me, well, how many sales did you make? And I would say, well, I made 5. Whereas the next day, if I went back and I worked on effective, what works, what doesn't waste people time, but makes them receptive to what I was going to sell in this case. And then I would work on how to be efficient. Doing an ineffective task in an efficient way doesn't make it more effective. There's a lot of effectives and efficients mixed up there. So I think I said that correctly.
Yeah.
Again, I didn't make that up, but I believe it to be true. Does that kind of half answer your question? Or
it's definitely good background, and I'd love to hear what kind of things you do to be more effective.
Well, I think it's experimentation. I think it's tracking. What gets measured gets managed. Knowing what the outcome that you're looking for. Again, I am a student. I try and study other people. I'm kind of 50% halfway through the process of writing a book. There'll probably be an ebook to begin with about a kind of a productivity lab or playbook necessarily, because I looked online for a place where there's many strategies for being more effective and efficient, if we can replace the word productive just for a second, because I think sometimes productive gives you that connotation that it's about doing more with absolutely less, or doing way more than absolutely less, or someone's trying to eliminate positions or eliminate the need for certain things. And especially if we're talking service, that's not necessarily a good thing. So I try and follow those people, but I couldn't find a place where there was kind of a one-stop shop for all these different terms. So I'm kind of scratching my own itch in terms of writing some things. And as I was doing that, I realized that a lot of these concepts build on each other. Some of them are very, I think I heard someone the other day say, the cult of productivity. And I certainly don't want to fall into that category. Again, not to overuse the word buzzwords, but things like batching and clearing to neutral, and they're all fancy Six Sigma type words that maybe people didn't use. But I'm trying to put those concepts into easy one paragraph explanations, real examples of how you can use them, and references. So that's just hopefully being a good student, because this, I don't know if you've ever heard the saying, when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. Mm-hmm. I think for 2017, maybe a better definition is when the right answers will show up when you ask the right questions. Because I certainly wouldn't want to portray myself as an expert or teacher in something that I'm not don't walk the talk necessarily. But things that I try and do is some of them are, I don't want to say state of the art, but some of them are things that most people haven't heard of, and some of them are time tested. Again, not to throw these different sayings into the mix because I don't want to bore your audience, but usually the best advice is both timely and timeless. If you're looking for that answer, it will be timely, and timeless means that it's generally worked over time. So planning at the end of the day or in the evening, preferably before your work day, if you get off work at 5 or 6, planning the next day is helpful. And then you can kind of put that away. Mm-hmm. I mean, I use some tools. My favorite tool of use right now is Google Keep. Sometimes when I don't have enough time to input stuff into Google Keep, which does actually have a voice recording, I'll just tell, being an iOS user, I'm sure Android has the same thing. I just say Siri, remind me in 20 minutes or an hour to do this. That way it boomerangs back to me. I like the idea of putting things off. Like Google Keep has a location-based. So an example is if I saw a customer today and I'm going to put an order in for them tomorrow or prompt something, I already put that into my Google Keep reminder, and when I get in the location of work, it will trigger and show and tell me put that order in. So I haven't forgotten about it, but I haven't got that dwelling on my mind too as well. I'm definitely a strong believer in, and I've noticed recently, as I get things off my to-do, or perhaps more accurately called to-do later list, I find that I don't have as much decision fatigue. I think it's, I'm not a game player in terms of like online video games, but I think of it as like your life points, your decision points, your focus points. And if you have some of these open loops throughout the day that you didn't get to, they may not be on the forefront of your mind, but I definitely think that they bring down that focus level. And I've certainly found, especially recently, that the more I clear those things out or feel good about putting them off on a schedule to deal with it at another time, then that increases my feeling that I've been more productive.
Mm-hmm. I've definitely noticed that too, and I'm sure there's psychology behind it. I'm not sure what it is exactly, but to your point about writing things down or getting it someplace else, I do kind of the old school. I'll email myself something, so I know it's in my inbox when I get back to my computer or something, or call myself and leave a voicemail. But it's kind of a similar thing where you get it off of your mind, and then you can focus on other things. And I think that's a key ingredient to not getting overwhelmed.
Yeah, and one of my backup questions for you, which hopefully won't count as on my third question, but one was like, how do you organize yourself?
Well, those two things right there. When I have a thought and I can email myself something, or if I have a blog post idea that I know I need to develop later, I'll write something down or send myself an email. I use something called Wunderlist, which is an online kind of to-do list organizational program, and it syncs to your phone, so you can add things or subtract things from there. And for me, it's great to be able to organize things. I even have when bills are due and things like that I put on there. But one of the most satisfying things is checking the box when it's done.
Yes.
And that's just, it feels good when those things are done. But it's a great place to kind of keep things organized. And I use that for big projects and long-term things that I know I need to keep focused on. But I also still, if I have it around here somewhere, it must be over there, I do a daily written to-do list. And I know some people have said that that's not a great thing to do, but it works for me. Some people are good with Post-it notes, and they do Post-it notes. And, I'm a big believer that you have to do what works for you. So if I can write it down like on a daily thing to do, and if I don't get it done today, it goes over to tomorrow's list, then, again, that works for me. So it's just kind of keeping things front of mind that need to be front of mind. And I might look into that Google Keep, because that sounds like a kind of a neat thing to be able to remind you of when things when you need to do things, when you don't have to do it right now, but you know you need to do it later.
Yeah, you can do location based and also put it in. And being a Google Calendar user, it shows those reminders on your Google Calendar too as well. And I've used Wunderlist and Toodle-Do and Todoist and AnyDo and got quite heavily into that. And I'm smiling as you actually mentioned it, I think 2 or 3 times, but my Twitter handle actually is WW4Me, which stands for what works for me. And because I've heard people like yourself and other people that I listen to that I try and be influenced by say that what works for me. So that's kind of like my concept is, hopefully what works for me works for others, but what works for you may work for me too.
Yeah,
so that's my Twitter.
I saw that on your Twitter, and I thought that was really cool. And some of your blogs are like, well, this is what works for me, and if it works for you, great. But this is kind of what I've found works, which is really cool.
Yeah, I think I had quite a few thoughts as you were speaking, but I was trying to pay attention and be present with what you were saying. Google Keep is quite handy. I'm not saying it's the best, but I think if you actually, I'm sorry, you brought up a good point about writing things down. I'm also a firm believer in that too as well, because I think that dexterous, if that's the word I'm looking for, or that physical is one thing to do voice to text on your phone or things like that, but that physical act engages nerves. I'm not a neuroscientist, don't play one on the internet, but I think I do believe, as I've heard other people say, that those more points of contact that you have will help remember those things.
Right.
So I think I do have those reminders, but every morning I may have a sales meeting and I write down on a piece of paper pretty much those things, because as you get a little bit older, your memory maybe doesn't serve you quite as well, and it helps me too as well. But I also try and be very aware of trying not to duplicate 2 or 3 things. If you've got a productivity system that you're writing notes down in one place and you're scanning things in another place and you're using Google Keep for this, or you're using Evernote, which is another program that a lot of people and I use too as well, I think that can be counterproductive, and it can lead to a feeling of overwhelm.
Yes.
And that is another, which again I think leads to procrastination. So
agreed.
Having one fairly central bucket, I think, is a key thing. And again, I try and use the system, collect, plan, do, review. Mm-hmm. I made that up, but that doesn't mean to say that, the getting things done system is not very similar. How you collect it, how you plan it, and if you do collecting and planning correctly, then doing should be fairly easy. And I think review is very important too as well. Not just an end-of-day review and planning for tomorrow, but just kind of like even a visualization exercise. Not to sound too woo-woo, but you can replay in your mind what happened, how it could have gone better. Mm-hmm. Is very important too as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the other things that I kind of thought of when you were just mentioning things is the calendar, because you mentioned the Google Calendar, and my wife makes fun of me because of all the things that I put on my calendar. Even like remind me to take the garbage out or whatever. And but I agree that if you have too many things in different places, then it does make it a little overwhelming. But it's also about habits too, I think. Like when I first started using Wunderlist, there was no, I had to physically go to it. So one of the things I did is I made it my homepage when I opened up Firefox. So that was the first thing that I saw.
What a great way to make it effective in an efficient way. Yeah. You eliminated steps.
But before I figured out how to do that, or that I should do that, I actually put a thing every morning on my calendar. Check Wunderlist. Like at 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning. It was a calendar thing, but that got me thinking about it, and then it dawned on me, why not just make it the first page I go to, when I open it up and it's automatically there. So
yeah, just again that having studied all these different productivity strategies, habit stacking is another word that if you do something already and stack a new habit that you're trying to do. And it sounds like you did that. The most obvious one that people use as an example is, I normally don't forget to brush my teeth. So what new habits can I put that I'm trying to introduce after that one?
Oh, that's a good idea.
Brush my teeth. So you open up wake your screen up, and what a great way. Love that idea. So simple. May only save you 5 seconds, but you have to, if you're involved in productivity or you're involved in making progress in your life, you have to believe that those seconds add up to hours, months, and years over time. And don't deplete your focus points. Getting back to that video game analogy.
Exactly.
Small things make a big difference, I think.
I had a friend of mine at the IAPA show who, because he wanted to focus more on the show and things, he moved his Facebook icon on his phone to someplace else. Like he put it in a folder and it kind of hid it. So
it wasn't a distraction, yeah.
Right. Well, and it's muscle memory too. If you go to one place, then you just go to check Facebook.
Yeah.
So he moved it off of there on his phone so he wouldn't be distracted by that. I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching this episode of LeaderTips Q&A. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you can be notified when new episodes come out. If you have a question for me, or if you'd have a question that you'd like to see addressed on a future episode, go ahead and put it in the comments. Thanks for watching.